I'm Katie Hall, the PTA, one of the PTA presidents. My partner in crime, my co-president, Eric Lutzker, may show up a little later. Tonight is a much anticipated event for many of our junior parents. We are welcoming two very experienced, very helpful, and really fun counselors, Gary Whitehouse of Whitehouse Consulting. He has been at this for 18 years, lots of expertise in both academic and sport-focused college selection and recruitment. In addition to that, Gary is a college program coordinator for 2 youth soccer clubs. And for anyone who has had to work with student athletes, you know that he must be an incredibly patient and engaging and fun person. He's also been kind enough, Gary's based here in Seattle, but he's also been kind enough to invite his friend, Jay Murray, who's here from Colorado. And he has his own consulting service called Solutions to Tuition. And he likes to help parents. He's here to discuss how to pay for college. He likes to help parents come up with college funding solutions. And for those of you who have started looking at schools, you're probably realizing that college is a lot more expensive than when we were in school. It can be a little daunting, but it is manageable. And that is why Jay has joined us. So Gary is going to be presenting the first half of tonight's presentation, and then Jay the second half. And then we're going to leave some time for a Q&A at the end of the talk. And just so you know, this first screen, both Gary and Jay do a free consultation. So even after this talk, please feel free to reach out to them if you have some more questions. But tonight, you can put questions in the chat during the talk, and then at the end, we'll be ready to answer some of those. So Gary, Jay, welcome to Lincoln High School. Virtually. And thank you so much for being here tonight for our parents.
Thank you, Katie. Hello, everybody. I wanted to just thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. I told this to the ladies before. I'm a 1975 graduate of Ingram High School. And yes, there was a Seattle in 1975. Long time ago, that's actually where the majority of the population of Seattle probably lived, from the Seattle center, Space Needle, north, and the north end was heavily populated, and the schools were very active. I had 450 kids in my graduation class. Lincoln was a full-out high school then. There was a very robust area everywhere from Lincoln north up, up through Shoreline. And Shorecrest. Shoreline was a full-time school then. But anyway, what I wanted to do is just kind of give you an idea. I'm a full-time resident of Seattle. I actually live on the east side now. My son, I moved over here. I raised my son by myself. He went to Lake Washington High School. About the sophomore year, we realized that we weren't going to get a lot of assistance understanding the soccer part of it. He was a soccer player. And so I just kind of stepped in as the type A dad that I am and started asking questions of everybody. And at the end of the day, my son wrote me a letter to tell me he didn't want to play college soccer because he was burned out. And I quit my job the next day and decided to start helping families, understanding that it's about college first and soccer second. My son is fine, by the way. He's a very successful realtor. He's 35 years old and great kid. So anyway, I'm not going to get much else into my bio. I will just say this, that I do have one client that people may recognize the name of. This young man's name is Jordan Morris. I call him Jordy because that's who he is to us, friends of the Morris family. I worked with Jordy's brother, Christopher, who was also a soccer player, Mercer Island family. He went to Seattle Pacific University, played 4 years there, got his accounting degree, is now married. And Jordy, of course, has unfortunately just suffered his second knee injury in the last 4 years and is out for the year, but he's doing okay. I just talked to his dad a couple of weeks ago. Great family, but he's the only claim to fame I have as far as a pro that I worked with. Most of my kids just go to college, but Jordy was fortunate enough to go to Stanford. So Without any talking any more, I want to dive right into our topics for tonight. So these are the topics that we're going to cover. So the ones on the top half is each one of those has an individual slide. Now, I have promised Katie to keep this to no more than 45 minutes or so. The idea is Jay's is a little bit longer. I'm hoping I'll be invited back at some point to bring other guest speakers in if you would like. I'm also just available, obviously, to talk, but I really want to just dive right in. And as we go through each one of these slides, I don't have enough time to spend on the details of each of them. So please, please, please write your questions down and send them in. If you need to fall off at the end of the conversation, all the the presentation, all the questions that are asked, we're gonna put down and write them, and we're gonna send them. We'll probably post them on the website or send them out to the families. Is that what you do, Katie?
Yes. So not only will we send them back out, but we will also record this video and post it for families to rewatch. So this information will be available to all of our parents and attendees. And we will, and then, like you said, with any questions we don't get to tonight, we will happily post with the video.
Perfect, thank you. And so that leads right into the first thing I wanted to talk about. So I'm assuming most of you have been to the Lincoln High School website. There is a section on there that says resources and services. That's where there's a tab that will come down. There's a tab there for Naviance, which is the first thing we're going to talk about. And there's also, if you go to the counselor slide, there's another set of tabs that comes down, and there's a very well done, shorter, less detailed presentation that was done by your counselors back in January. And I watched it before we ever got to the point of knowing what we want to talk about tonight. There's a lot of really helpful information. That's probably the 10,000 foot overview. This might be 5,000 for me, but then Jay's going to really drill down on some more important issues, which is obviously paying for college, which to me is the single most important thing. So I'm going to just go next to the first slide, and we're going to talk about Naviance. I don't know how many of you have not registered for this program. It's free. It's a pretty cool program in that you can literally, this whole entire process can be done on your own without any help. It's not necessarily what I recommended. I wish I would have had somebody to help me when I was learning the whole process. But Naviance, once you sign up, there are probably 25 individual videos on every single thing that they talk about. So just keep that in mind. This is not in any way, shape, or form a sales pitch about hiring either one of us, but there's just a lot of cool information on there. A lot of charts, a lot of graphs. It'll give you histories about this, histories about that. But the most important part about it is this does link up with your counselors. So as your seniors are starting to get their teacher recommendations together, which, by the way, I just remembered this, teacher recommendation requests should go out at the end of junior year. Give your teachers the summer to write them. Okay, there's a lot of kids that wait till the last minute on a lot of these different topics, and it just complicates the issues immensely. So the Naviance links, so your school list will link to different applications you use, and then the counselors get notification, and they send your transcript and your letters of recommendations directly to the schools. And one of those is the Common App application, which we're going to talk about. I'm going to talk about in a minute, and I think Jay a little bit maybe too. But the Common App is a web-based application that serves over 800 schools in the country. And once you've done once you've done the base application and you've written what we call their essay, which is really just a personal statement, you then are about 80% done with any school that's a Common App school. So I'll talk about this a little bit more. Standardized testing. Boy, is this not the hottest topic in the country right now. Okay, all schools accept either SAT or ACT, period. Okay, they don't care. Don't let, you're gonna have people that say, oh, California prefers SAT. They don't, okay? Actually, California is a bad example now, Jay, because California is going test blind in another year with all their public schools. But if you're interested, and if you can, I have a connection to be able to have you take a free a diagnostic test for $40 to be able to get a SAT and ACT emailed to you. They will score the test within a week. Bottom line is everybody's different. It doesn't matter which one you think you might do better on. The SAT is better publicized. I want to say probably a better example. The SAT is very involved. The College Board is very involved with our public school systems. So they've just done a better job. The ACT, when I first started doing this, hardly anybody knew about it. Okay. So I just want to talk about test optional and test blind. So test optional means exactly what it states here. If it's optional, they will look at your scores if you submit them. If you don't want to submit them, you're fine. But there is a couple things that you need to know. First of all, it can support maybe a slightly lower GPA than what your test scores are. If the test scores are considerably lower than what your kid's GPA is, then you don't need to submit them. Nobody knows. College Board, ACT Board, they do not send your scores to anybody unless you ask them to. Okay, so just that's what you need to know about test optional. This can open up a lot of questions, which I'm just going to skip on down right now because this could take up a lot of time. Test blind is a new term that you may have not heard of at all. Test blind means they will not look at an SAT or ACT. California's public school system is going test blind. Jay, you can just nod. 2022, right? Jay? 90% sure. 95% sure. Anyway, they're going test blind right away. So they will not accept SAT or ACTs. Not a reason to think you shouldn't take them, because once again, these are going to be a big difference maker in a lot of things. You can also know this, that as of today for the 2021 class, and certainly for a lot of 2022 colleges I've talked to, if you submit a test score, and it can actually help strengthen not only your application, but also money that you may receive, that Jay's going to talk about a little bit more. One thing to also understand is most colleges will accept your test score through the December tests. So the December is one of the months of your senior year. December is one of the months that the SAT and ACT are both given. The major exception to this is if you apply early decision 1, which I don't think we're going to probably talk about tonight unless someone has a specific question about it. Just know that, but do not wait. The perfect scenario, your juniors right now, if you can sign up for the June SAT or ACT, you can take the test as many times as you want. It's not looked down upon. I just suggest not waiting until next fall if you can avoid it. What it really will do is help you with maybe possibly what schools you want to start applying to, and that process starts before your high school season starts. So really important to understand. Now this is kind of just a timeline, okay? And this is really just bullet points is all this is. So this is obviously for June. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, I just got a notice that I was muted. Okay, so so this, I'm not gonna read every one of these, but these are just important things you need to know. You know, what's your cumulative GPA? If you only knew how many times I looked at somebody and I get the deer in headlights look and they go, well, I got all B's this semester. We don't apply to colleges with last semester's grades. We apply to colleges with our cumulative GPA through the entire 4 years of high school. There are certain schools that will throw out freshman year, but that's not that common. Someone do it, but it's really important that you understand that. Obviously, we all know what the classes we should take. That's what your counselors are here for. You know, that's something you should be monitoring. But the bottom line is just get a copy, and especially if you're younger, if you have younger kids, let's present them with their cumulative GPA transcript every semester. It's worth a dinner table conversation to have it right in front of them and have them take pride, or maybe wonder why, or maybe want to work a little bit harder when they see that. It's not about next semester. I mean, it's always about next semester, but we can't get rid of what we already have. So remember that every semester is going to get averaged into a previous one. Okay, I'm kind of going to go pre-COVID, because in a pre-COVID world, we would take our first test in the fall or winter of junior year. I'm sure there's many of you are going, oh no, I haven't done that. That's okay. We can't change yesterday. Don't worry about it. But if you're a sophomore, this is a really good thing to start talking about. That's why I said summer or before or fall, you take your practice test. That would be for a sophomore right now. Okay. And so then we would lead into, if you get good scores and you can get them out of the way, you would take your testing done maybe even by spring of junior year. Because if you're taking heavy AP classes, you're going to have a pretty heavy spring. And if you play, a spring sport or anything, you're going to be even busier. So my whole mantra is to get things done as soon as you can. This is not a surprise, this stuff to me or Jay, but it's just a matter of not procrastinating and not waiting. Okay. Winter, spring, visit schools in person if possible. Well, that's been changed a little bit. Okay, a lot by COVID. The good news is every single school as of last June had a really, really robust virtual tour section. And now you can do almost everything you would do in an in-person tour virtually, including an admissions counselor meeting. You can have a meeting if you're major specific. You can have a meeting with a professor. My seniors that are trying to decide, this is decision-making month. So for you juniors, April's the decision-making month. I got kids right now that I work with in my program that are contacting some of the schools individually, trying to help decide based on their major interest, just what they want to do, and they're getting meetings scheduled. In a non-COVID world, most schools will have a senior acceptance day or more, or 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. And it's pretty cool. You can go on campus, you can get an entire experience with a school, starting with attending a class, having lunch in the cafeteria, getting a tour, another tour maybe from a student that's maybe doing a major you're interested. So it's pretty cool the way that all works. Once again, this is for juniors. In June, start thinking about writing your essays. The common application, which, like, once again, if you have one common application school, you're going to do it. So for instance, most of the private schools around here use the common application. The essay topics are already out for next year for those. There's 7 topics to pick from. They're very generic. What you need to know is it's not probably a good idea that you send your son or daughter into the summer and just say, oh, start writing something, honey, and let's see how it turns out. These are important issues. The common application topic, and actually any personal, they're personal statements. They tell the admissions people a lot of what you're all about. Probably equally as important as the grades are the essays, because it's really the only way they're going to get to know you, unless for some reason you're able to meet with an admissions person in person. So the Common App opens August 1st. Set the date on your calendar. All of my clients get a nice friendly reminder that on August 1st, they will be signing up for it. And they send me their username and password. And in the first 2 weeks of August, we go through every single one of them to make sure they get the common application started. It is about 80% of an application for the entire school. Each school that uses the Common App then has a supplemental section that is available. Those become available about the middle to end of August. And then you can start formulating your schedule to get this stuff done. In a perfect world, your applications could easily be done by the end of October. Easily, if you plan appropriately. And this is just segue, just more information, okay? September, October, complete your applications. There's no harm in getting them done. Pay attention to the early action deadlines. Early action has no binding anything. It actually gets to the counselors earlier. They have more time to look at applications. Not that they're going to spend more time reading yours specifically, but it does make a difference. Jay, I'm sure you've agreed. You've talked to many counselors, college counselors, or college admissions people. It makes a difference. UW will creep up on you faster than you could possibly imagine. University of Washington, 40,000 kids apply there a year. And that's not even a high number compared to like a UCLA or something like that. But the deadline is November 15th. And I can tell you that there's a large number of people that don't even start thinking about applications until, you know, you get back to school, summer still, we still have nice weather, you know, everybody's going to the beach in the afternoon. And next thing you know, it's the middle of October and you go, oh, well, maybe we should start thinking about this. And then it becomes a train wreck. And it's really hard on the counselors. Once again, if you haven't, and your teachers, if you haven't had asked 2 teachers if they could write a teacher recommendation for you, and Jay, I'll just ask you to make a note on that so you can comment later. I haven't seen that not still being needed. I know there was a lot less schools this year that I saw that required them. And I don't know if that was a COVID thing or not. Let's see, the last bullet point. So we've talked about this, or I've just mentioned this. So this year, the UC California schools, University of California, anything, Santa Barbara, Santa Cruz, UCLA, their deadline was November 30th. And the California State Schools deadline was 1 week later. There's one application for each subset of those schools. Okay, but once again, where most regular applications are due January 1 to January 15th, I don't really think anybody wants to spend their winter break hounding over their kid to get applications done before a deadline. It really creates a lot of just undue stress that's not needed. All right, classes. This comes up a lot. If your kid is not a super or not focused, that's the wrong word. The kid that's going to do really well in APs and honor classes, don't take them, because all you're doing is setting them up for a lower GPA, and you're also setting them up to maybe get into a school that's going to be too hard for them. I mean, the highest end schools, and I think it's probably 5 to 8% is what we're talking about, require them. You're not going to get into Stanford, Pomona, Claremont, 2 of the top 5 schools in the West Coast without high GPAs in AP classes. And we're talking about a lot of them, 3 to 5 per year, or three minimum per year. I had a kid last year that took 5 AP classes his junior and senior year and did not get into Stanford. So it can be very stressful. Those schools have very low acceptance rates, and it can be really, really stressful for a family. I just suggest we always have just a nice balance of reach 50-50 at safety schools. And it's not about trying to get into the best school, because honestly, there's no bad colleges in the entire country. I have plenty of friends, as I'm sure parents do on here, that have done quite well in life going to, just a really good public school, getting their master's, and maybe just starting their own business, things like that. Take what you can handle. Every one of your children is completely different, as you well know. If you have multiple kids, the same gene pool does not produce the same child twice, period. I had one, so I was lucky because I didn't know any of this until I started working with families, but boy, have I seen it in some of the families I've worked with 3 or 4 of their kids in. Okay, so this is just going over somebody help me. I can't remember. I can't see the top slide. What is the date of the name of this slide?
Visiting colleges.
Thank you. Thank you. All your faces are in there. So completely changed. We talked about this already a little bit. This is really, really important. But I'm telling you right now, don't wait for schools to open up. Okay, California is going to stay closed for a lot longer. Now, you're probably too late to go visit any schools during spring breaks, because I think most of you, like I, are just really, really anxious to get out of town and take a vacation. That doesn't involve looking at colleges, but that's where it gets back to the situation where you can do college tours and information sessions online. It's really, really helpful. And that's a great way to communicate with a school. The admission people know if you're on those. And most of the larger schools have admissions counselors inside of their own schools that are assigned to certain states or areas. It's a great way to get to know somebody. I have a young man who's going to school back east to a very prestigious school. And it was really cool the way it worked out. He actually, during COVID, started a relationship with a gentleman who was from Seattle. They started emailing. It was just the kid and him, you know, with the parents copied on everything. And he got into the school on early decision and is going to an amazing school. I absolutely believe it was because of the relationship that he was able to generate with this guy. Don't worry if you can't. Not everybody does it. But I like to tell people to see the schools that are around our area first, you know, and I put some notes here. I mean, UW, Wazoo, Western Washington, they're three completely different experiences and settings for public schools. You know, you have Western, which is a college town kind of around a city. Then you have Wazoo, WSU, which is really its own city and a tremendous campus. And then you have UW, which is, of course, is 40,000 undergraduates and, you know, is a massive institution that is a very prestigious school. Then you have the private schools, Seattle U, Seattle Pacific, University of Puget Sound, and PLU down in Tacoma. Those are schools that a lot of people don't visit, the ones in Tacoma. You need to go see those if you're interested in a small to medium-sized private school, because those two schools, there's thousands of them throughout the country. And I'm not going to get into my own personal thoughts about getting out of the state and going to school somewhere else, but it's a pretty cool experience to be able to go somewhere for 4 years of your life and just have a completely different experience than what you grew up with here. And obviously climate has a lot to do with it, just all the different reasons. Once you're accepted, like I said, this is post-COVID or pre-COVID and hopefully post-COVID, most schools offer one or two full days where you can go on campus and experience it. Right now, I've got seniors that are trying to do that, but most schools in California are not doing that at all. There's very few that are, so they're doing it remotely. Oh, that's the last slide. Okay, I made it. I'm going to go back to this slide right here. And I'll show this now and I'll show it later for those of you that came late. There's Jay's and my contact information. Katie already alluded to the fact that we both do free consultations. Do not think you're going to get sold. You're not. I'm happy to do it, love to do it. And without any further ado, I'm just going to turn this back over to Katie, who's going to introduce Jay, and then we're going to get to the second half of our presentation.
Oh, hello, there's my video. You're having a moment. Thank you, Gary. That was really amazing. I see that super helpful, super thoughtful, and I think that timeline is so crucial, especially right now, where many of us still think it's March of 2020, or at least I do. Jay, this is the part that I think is so crucial for so many parents. I'm so grateful that you came. One thing I do want to point out to parents is the one thing that has shocked my daughter the most about being at college is the number of kids she's in school with who are struggling with college finances because they and their parents didn't have a plan going in. So I am so thrilled that Jay is here. Thank you so much, and I'll let you take it away.
Well, thank you very much, Katie, and welcome everybody. Thank you for having me this evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. So I'm Jay Murray. I'm the president of Solutions for Tuition. And I started the company when I had 2 kids in college and 1 in high school. So I've been in your shoes and I understand the challenges. The only difference for me was it became my passion, my lifelong passion, to help parents understand the college financial system, not just financial aid, but paying for college, whether you're qualified for aid or not. Our company's credo is the only family that should pay full cost for college is the family that so chooses. And so every family can cut the cost of college. You'll all do it a little bit differently, and we're going to go over some of those strategies this evening. It's important that we're starting from an accurate position, and that you know how much college costs, because it's a lot more expensive than it was when you as a parent went to school. The average public university is around $22,000. The average public out of state is around $38,000. And many private colleges are $70,000, $75,000, $80,000 a year. This is published price. This is sticker price. You don't necessarily have to pay sticker price, but you have to be aware of how to reduce that cost, what colleges will reduce and what colleges won't, and where your family stands in the system. Right now, colleges are inflating about 3% per year, and that's the lowest of all time. And it's been there for several years. However, we see signs that inflation may pick up, and if that happens, you'll see college costs increasing year to year a little bit more. But don't be fooled, because a lot of colleges are much more than the averages. Here you can see the cost for UW for a resident, but then a non-resident at Oregon or even Stanford. This is per year. And so, but it's sometimes difficult to compare because the colleges don't always use the same metric when they're publishing their price. But basically, what they call their budget, the cost of attendance, consists of tuition and fees, room and board, books and supplies, transportation, personal expenses sufficient for the prudent student to live. If your student's not prudent in high school, don't expect a lifestyle change in college. But this is the true cost of attendance. So it's pretty much everything. But some colleges don't publish the full cost here. And so you have to be careful to make sure that you're comparing apples to apples. So for us as parents in the 21st century, the costs are going up rapidly. A cost of a college education has inflated, has increased in cost more than any other commodity in the world. Many families have not saved enough to pay for their kids to go to college, and so they're challenged. 60% of students don't finish where they started school. This is one of your number one saving strategies. When Gary's talking about finding the right fit college and visiting colleges, make sure that your student is in love with the school they set foot on as a freshman, and they'll graduate there. If they transfer, they're going to lose credits, and it's going to take them longer. It's not the end of the world. More than half of the students don't finish in 4 years, and it's not because they're not trying. This is particularly a problem at the public universities, and it's because of state budget cuts, and it's really hard for students to get the sequence of classes they need in the order that they need to graduate in 4 years. So at a public university nationwide, the average is 5.25 years to graduation. One of the things that Katie and Gary and I really hope is that you guys take action, that you take some of the ideas you've learned this evening and you start researching it. You start figuring out what's going to work for your family, because hope is not a strategy. So what can you do? Well, the first thing that you can do is calculate an accurate cost for all of your kids if you have more than one. Obviously, college planning for a large family is different than college planning for a small family. You can calculate your EFC, okay? The EFC is the output of the net price calculators, and we have the most accurate net price calculator on our website. It's how much you're expected to pay per student per year. There's some variability in it, so you have to understand how it works, and we'll touch on some of that. But this is your financial aid. So are you going to be financial aid qualified or not? It's important that you know that. And then learn the averages, okay? Because basically once you calculate your expected family contribution, when you subtract that from the cost of the college, it's called demonstrated need. That's how much how much help you need, sorry. But colleges consider financial aid to be both gift aid and self-help. And gift aid is the good stuff. You don't have to pay it back. Self-help is work study and loans. And, work study is a beautiful thing, and a student loan can be effective because kids are limited in how much they can borrow. But the big one is the gap, okay? So a lot of the very expensive private colleges will meet 100% of your demonstrated need, and they'll meet it with gift aid, meaning they just drop the price. And this is where, for some families, the cost of a private university that might have a sticker price of $75,000 or $80,000 can end up being cheaper or the same price as the public state university. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but it happens all the time, and you don't know until you start to investigate. Then you can minimize your EFC to the lowest legal and ethical level. There are things that you can do legally and ethically to reduce the amount that you have to pay for college. So here are some numbers. These are some pretty staggering costs, and you can see the difference for the same education at the same school, the difference between a high school junior and a high school freshman. That's just your 3% per year inflation. So the younger your kids are, the more expensive it's going to be by the time they get there. And of course, if you're paying more at a university, those costs can be significant. So, some families can be looking at $500,000, $1 million to educate their kids. That's certainly worthy of some planning and some effort. I saw a study once that said people spend more time planning their vacation than they do planning for their kids' college. And certainly after being cooped up for the last year, I can definitely see how that would be the case. But this is definitely worthy of your attention and a little bit of research and effort. If you're not motivated yet, ask yourself, how old will you be when your youngest child graduates college? And for many, that's the year I was going to retire. And our message is, do some planning, retire on time, retire in the manner in which you want it. And then people ask me all the time, is college worth it? That's a lot of money. A Harvard professor said, education trumps money and social prestige as a route to happiness. What he's saying is educated people generally are happier people. Ben Franklin's credited with saying, if you think education's expensive, try ignorance. And it's never too early to think about tuition. A lot of these strategies start disappearing as the kids get older. So the sooner you get started, the more doors that are open for you, the more options you have to save money. So as parents, we want the best for our kids, right? But we don't want to deplete our cash flow, our savings, our retirement, or take on too much student and parent debt. And you don't have to worry about the kids taking on too much debt anymore because the system's changed, and we'll touch on that momentarily. How are you going to pay for it? There's other people's resources. That's my favorite. Need-based aid. If you can't afford to send your kids to college, there are programs to help, but that bar is set pretty low. There's merit aid. That can be academic, that can be athletic, music, community service, all sorts of different things. And then there's private scholarships, or what we call outside scholarships from non-colleges can also help. Parents have resources. They have income, assets. They can borrow. The kids as well may have savings. They may have a job. And it looks like we switched some of the categories here, but, the kids can also borrow. If I forget to mention it, there's some new grandparent strategies out there, and it's not the grandparent gift. So if I forget at the end of the presentation, remind me, and I'll talk about that. So need-based aid is based upon the family's income and assets. Okay, merit-based aid is not. It's based on their merit. Do they qualify for these types of programs? The next step is to calculate your expected family contribution. This is just plugging in your financial information to a net price calculator, and you get to pick a college to see, what it looks like. So is the college going to discount for you and your student, or are they not going to? We covered this. What I'll mention is there's two EFCs typically. When people say expected family contribution, typically they're talking about the federal EFC, which is the FAFSA. You guys have heard about the FAFSA. every college in the nation except Hillsdale and Grove City uses the FAFSA. About 400 private schools also use a form called the CSS profile. That's the institutional methodology, and it's different. It looks at families differently, and private colleges use both the FAFSA and the CSS profile. So many private colleges, except for most of the faith-based privates, require both forms. Your public universities typically are FAFSA only. FAFSA opens on October 1st every year. Every college has their own deadlines. Gary kind of touched on this. Don't wait. You know, a lot of the high need awards are first come, first served. They're quota based. And once the money's gone, it's gone. And a student has to apply every year. So the first FAFSA goes in typically in the fall, after October 1st of the senior year. And then the following year, you know, the student, even though they're on campus, will file again for their upcoming academic year and so on, all through all 4 years. People make mistakes all the time on the FAFSA that cost them money. These are some of the more common mistakes. You don't report your retirement investments. You don't report the value of a business with less than 100 employees. This is a huge strategy for many families. If the family is blended, that is, the parents are divorced and or remarried, the FAFSA only looks at the custodial parent. And the custodial parent is the parent with which the student lived with most during the base year. The base year is 2 years prior to the date of attendance. So, you know, that's for juniors, that's 2020 is your first base year. And so the FAFSA provides federal funding also for grants and loans. The CSS profile is a little bit different. It looks at all biological parents. There is a small cost. Private colleges use it to give away their own money. And some of the public Ivies use the CSS profile as well. It looks at more than the FAFSA. It looks at home equity, the value of a business, and as I mentioned, both biological parents and their spouses if remarried. But the income limits are higher. And the asset allowances are higher on the CSS profile because generally it's used by colleges which are more expensive. And so again, don't automatically assume that because you have high income or high home equity or the value of a business or lots of savings that you're not going to qualify. These are two completely different systems. We talked about net price calculators. A lot of them aren't that accurate. That's why I say the one that we use on our website, which you're welcome to, is the most accurate in the nation. And so EFC is a function of student income and assets and parent income and assets. And I'm not going to go through the details. You can find this online. What I want you to understand and see here is that assets and income of the student weigh much more heavily than assets and income of the parents. So if you're qualified for need-based aid, you do not want your kids to earn or own too much. We talked about this. Minimize your EFC to the lowest legal and ethical level. This is getting into specific strategies, and there's a ton of them, many of which are intuitive, like pay your bills before you file the FAFSA, right? Reduce your cash on hand. That's a pretty simple one. But this is something better left for a subsequent discussion. There's all sorts of money out there. There's federal money, there's state money, and there's college money. And it's all given away by the Director of Financial Aid, okay? She's the one that crafts the award and gives away all of this money at each college. This is a pretty cool program, the Western Undergraduate Exchange, or the WUI program. And you may or may not have heard of this, but the WUI program is part of the WICHE program. WUI, WICHE, kind of sounds like an Eagle song, right? Sorry. But this is a really cool program that if you're a student in one state and you want to go to a public university in a neighboring state listed here, including Alaska and Hawaii and the Northern Mariana Islands, you can often go for 1.5 times in-state tuition, which is a halfway between resident and non-resident tuition, but it's different in every state. So not all majors are allowable. At Arizona, it's only for chemical mining majors. Most states, it's pretty much every, or most schools, it's pretty much every major. In California, half of the schools aren't even in the program. At Montana State, it's a merit program. So you have to just hop on this website. And you guys can see it here. And I know that the school, that Lincoln is going to make this available to you. So all of these links will be available to you. This site is really user-friendly, and it's pretty cool because they'll show you, hey, you know, you're going to save $8,000 a year at this school in this program. Here's some Washington State programs. You've probably heard of some of these: Seattle Promise, Running Start, the new Washington College Grant, Husky Promise for UW, and College Bound. Some of these are need-based programs and some are not. Again, check them out, because if you qualify, these can be great cost savings strategies. The one thing I will tell you that a lot of parents don't know is that the Ivies and the highly selective colleges do not offer merit aid. There's no scholarships there. There's no scholarships at Stanford. There's no scholarships at Pomona. You're either need-based qualified or you're full pay. They're very generous, you know, with need-based aid. And so for a lot of families, you know, that can work out to be a really good deal. But if you don't qualify, you're full pay. And so the type of student that could get into those very selective schools is obviously going to get huge awards at what we call second-tier colleges, which are really not second-tier. They're very fine schools. But it may be important for you to set expectations, you know, if you have a high-achieving student. Loans. You know, the whole loan program has changed. In a nutshell, what I will tell you is that kids are limited in what they can borrow now. They can only borrow $5,500 as a freshman, and it's their right. It's an entitlement, okay? $6,500 as a sophomore, $7,500 junior, $7,500 senior. That's it. It's $27,000, okay? It's actually capped at $31,000. And so, you know, all of these stories you see on TV, hearing about kids that borrow $250,000 to go to that expensive private school, it doesn't happen anymore. It can happen in grad school, and parents can overborrow. The federal government will be happy to loan you as much money as you need as a parent with a soft credit check. There's no credit check on the student loans. So you can decide what's right for your family. You know, does it help your family to have your student take out that loan? $31,000 is a chunk of change, but it's not huge compared to, you know, $160,000 or a $300,000 college education. Or do you want them to have some skin in the game? Those are really, you know, questions each family has to discuss at the dinner table. Student loan interest rates right now and parent loan interest rates are at the lowest historical rate of all time. The bad thing about the parent loans is there's a 4.236% origination fee. They tack that on when you borrow, but it's available if you need it. My life's work is helping families not borrow too much, because that can really get you in trouble. And we, you know, the origination fee on the Stafford loans are the student loans. That's how I remember it. They both start with ST, and plus and parent both start with P. That's an easy way to remember it. Borrowing increases your cost. I'm not going to go into this. A lot of families have gotten in trouble by borrowing too much. Don't be like them. Scholarships. I mean, most colleges offer different types of scholarships: academic, merit, music. You know, if a marching band needs a sousaphone player and your kid is a sousaphone player, that could work out quite well. There's just all sorts of availability. And then we have the private scholarships, like Stuck at Prom. Have you guys heard about this one? All you have to do is go to prom in clothes made from duct tape, okay? And there's some pretty decent prizes in here. Take some gumption for a couple kids to show up at prom in clothes made from duct tape. When I first heard of this, I said to myself, this is not going to be pretty. But you can Google it, and you can see these outfits these kids make are elaborate. I think 2 years ago, the winner spent 400 hours on their gown and tux. I would argue that if you're going to spend 400 hours applying for a broad range of private scholarships, might be more productive, but hey, they won. The Jif Peanut Butter Scholarship is no longer, it used to be for 5th or 6th graders. But the message is still there. There are scholarships for young kids or for junior high or high school age kids. You don't have to wait until the kids are in college to begin applying for outside scholarships, non-college scholarships. You need a system. This is a topic for a different time, but students that are willing to put in the work and submit quality applications, and lots of them, are going to find success. And these scholarships can be used to reduce the cost of any college. So again, our message is the only family that should pay full price for college is the family that so chooses. So if you choose to, you're probably not on the call tonight, right? I mean, you're here because you want to learn about how to save money. So who gets the money? I mean, this in closing, where are the opportunities? And here they are. If you're a student of divorced parents, there's all sorts of strategies. If you're a W-2 employee or a 1099 independent contractor making less than, actually in many colleges, it's now $250,000 a year at the private schools. There you can have need-based aid. At most of your in-state publics, you're phased out at $65,000 adjusted gross income. So that's why you don't see a lot of people getting a lot of need at those state universities, but we see families all the time, started a new business, showed a loss, didn't have any income, got a ton of financial aid. Private colleges have those higher income levels. Business owners, if you're a business owner, you've won the lottery when it comes to paying for college. Student athletes obviously can be attractive, can earn money both academically and athletically. 2 or more students in college changes the calculation. Obviously, you're paying more, and so your EFC is going to drop. Parents of high-achieving students, colleges love high-achieving kids. They're going to give them more money. And I know that we all think about colleges as these big, impersonal, money-making machines, and they are. But they can also have a compassionate side. And one of our areas of expertise is working with widowed parents, because there's just typically so much devastation and emotion and adversity that it becomes very difficult and oftentimes financially challenging. And I have seen so many colleges reach out and lend a helping hand to students and parents that may have been thinking, I can't even go. And there's other situations. So just don't assume, because your situation might be dire, that you're not going to be able to go to college. So that's pretty much it for us this evening. Are there any questions?
Let's see, were there any in the chat? Here we go. Thank you, Jay. I think that is the one thing that parents get the most stressed, especially when you start visiting campuses. My husband actually called me hyperventilating from Duke University because he was in the middle of the tour and was like, oh. So, here's a good one. What about the grandparent contribution?
Oh, great question. So, I'll take a step back and just kind of set the stage. So if you have high financial need, there's a limit as to how many gifts you can get or how many outside scholarships you can win before it starts eating into gift aid. If there's not a need-based component, it doesn't matter. You can win up to the cost of attendance. So I'll mention that first off. But, oftentimes the grandparents have secretly saved for kids. We see it all the time. They surprise them at graduation. Hey, I bought Microsoft when you were born, and now it's worth a ton of money, and we want you to have this for college. Wonderful. One of the new grandparent strategies, and a couple of years ago was a lot more common when interest rates were higher, and I think it'll become more common as interest rates rise again, is the grandparent as lender. So oftentimes grandparents that are retired are living on fixed income. And, if you've taken a look at bond yields lately, they're pretty much yielding 1.7 to 2%. And, when a lot of parents planned, hey, I'm going to be able to make 5 or 6% on my portfolio. And if the parents are saying, hey, I've got to pay 5.3% on my loan and maybe more next year and maybe even more the year after that, sometimes they can come to a meeting place and say, hey, let's split the difference. Now that also involves a personal dynamic. So, it has to, the relationship has to be right for that to happen. But we've seen it work pretty well. Thanks for reminding me.
Thank you. That is a really good answer. And I do think that, when grandparents are planning, I think also really communicating with them about what they're comfortable with as you're planning. My husband and I ran into that as well, where his parents had set aside some money, but again, when they went to college, it was like $3 a semester. So but that is a really good answer. There's another great question. In your experience, do websites like niche.com accurately predict the chance of admission based on GPAs and test scores? That may be more of a question for Gary.
And Gary's muted.
Gary, you're muted.
I'm sorry, and I was, can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
In your experience, do websites like niche.com accurately predict the chance of admission based on GPA and test scores?
Jay, you want to collectively give that answer together? You go first.
No.
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 I guess we agree on that one.
So, go ahead, Jay.
They give you the averages, but there's no average, very few kids are average. And there's so much else that goes into the mix. So
let me go ahead and give you a hint on what we'd like to do in a future call. There is a brand new company that just got started in the last year called Tuition Fit. And you guys, you don't need to do a call. You can go find their website. This gentleman started, basically what they do is all you need to do is share your child's, what am I looking for? Admissions, acceptance, and their acceptance letter with all the costs. You black out all your names, all your personal information. And if you share the letter, you get to see what other colleges in that year are giving to other people, first of all, okay? Second of all, if you join and you pay $49, they will allow you to see what's going on in other parts of the areas that you may not even be applying to. So now if you think about how this full circle of life works, and you've got someone, constantly keeping you in track, you talk to someone like Jay, you have that information, you are armed and dangerous. And this is not a commercial or a selling point, but all these things are out there for very little amount of money. When it comes back to the websites, okay, I'm the least biggest fan in the world with ratings. Okay, college ratings, all those things. We in the business argue about that. We don't argue about. We all just talk about this all the time. Your world news and reports, U.S. News, World Reports, all those ratings. Yes, we all know the top eight of the top schools in the world are the Ivy League schools. Period. But the bottom line is there are great colleges everywhere. And so when I use niche myself sometimes, if I need to just an average cost. If I'm helping somebody out with a school list, it's pretty easy. You can go and get the average cost. It's a little difficult sometimes to find that on an individual school's website. I just tell people all the time, if you Google exactly what you're looking for, or Bing or whichever particular search tool you like, you can generally find your answer quicker than trying to go to the websites. But no, I am not a fan of any of those. I use them, some of them, for information.
Great, thank you. And I think that's a good perspective to just remind parents that those are not defining, they're more just general And you shouldn't allow those sites to scare you away or make you feel like you're not truly competitive, or that those may not be schools for you. Thank you. Another great question. Do schools have any automatic access to SAT or ACT scores, or do they only have access if you select them to receive?
They only have access if you submit your scores to them. And this is a great, this has come up so much in the last year, especially when people talk about COVID and they didn't have the chance to take a score, or they want to wait till they get the perfect score. You can take the SAT or ACT as many times as you want. It's actually not, it's not looked down upon. We are not trying to wait till the perfect score, but the only way the scores, there's two ways they get them. Either when you sign up for the test, you actually can send your scores to 5 schools for free. Don't do that. That doesn't make any sense to do it then. You want to do it after you get your scores, and then it costs roughly, I think it's $12 per test per school. So you send those to the schools when you apply to. And getting back to the test optional schools, it's really a good idea just to figure out whether you think that's going to support your application or not. And Jay, you can disagree with this. I have found this year, I've had quite a few families that just called admissions themselves. And if you've got a kid that can do this, it's worth its weight as gold. Even if they're sitting next to their parent and they're writing the question down, but ask them what they prefer to see. As Jay said, they are businesses. They need our income. They need our money. And, it's really important for people to understand that they shouldn't be afraid or to not ask questions. But bottom line is this: you do not have to do it unless you want to. And I see that Stephen's asking quite another question, and I can see the question now.
Oh, can you see it? Great.
Let me bring it back up. It just went away.
Oh,
that's okay. I got it. He's been receiving info from schools. Yes, he took the PSAT. Is that correct, Stephen? Must be. So the PSAT.
He did. I kind of figured that's what it was.
That's okay. This is a great topic. Okay, so the PSAT is run by College Board. College Board is everywhere. College Board has a lot, I don't know what their income is, their revenue, but it's got to be 10 times what ACT is, I would assume, because of all the different things they do. So the PSAT is there, and they actually sell the PSAT scores to colleges. It's not a secret. Okay. So colleges then go to College Board and say, give me your kids that got 1,200 and above. And I can tell you right now that a kid that scores at 1,000 in their sophomore year could easily get a 1,400 in their senior year or in their junior or senior year. You just never know. Besides the fact that PSATs are generally given, and I say this for our Seattleites, a dark and ugly October morning at 8 o'clock. And there, you don't study for a PSAT. That's not the object. Although people, I say that, but as I say that, people are going to go, well, you can get something for it. The scholarships that come out of PSAT and College Board for that are so hard to get and are so minimal. Your time is way better spent on something else. And that's what I think is one of the things Jay reminded me of as I was listening to his presentation again. Every time I listen to his presentation, I get nervous, I get excited, and I go, I'm sure glad I'm not doing this again. But I kind of am, because I'm helping other people with it. But it's interesting. So yeah, so that's what's going on, Steve, is you're getting advertisements for schools that are interested in your kid. And it has nothing to do with your finances. They don't have any idea how much you make. They're just randomly getting scores and sending them letters out. And you're going to get those. The easiest thing to do if you don't want to burden yourself, and I tell this to people every day, is just unsubscribe from their emails, and you won't get another email from them.
Another thing I wanted to add to that, because many of the junior parents at Lincoln know that the PSAT was kind of sprung on our students. They weren't given a lot of warning. They didn't have older upperclassmen to tell them. But the one thing I like to remind everyone is that the students who are going to receive scholarships based on PSATs are the students who are just going to knock that out of the park no matter what. And we're already kind of on that track anyway. My poor daughter was very stressed about that. She went in panic mode, and then she was like, I didn't do well. And I was like, it doesn't matter. You know, it's a way to get a feel for your SAT and what you need to work on if you want to take it for real, and if you're not in the running for those. Thank you though, and a lot less stress about that. The other thing I wanted to add for other parents is for people who grew up in this area, there used to be reciprocity with like Oregon schools, like direct reciprocity. And while we still have the WUI, I did want to remind people that Oregon State, University of Oregon, if your child has they have actually 3 different levels of scholarship, honor scholarship based on GPA. And if your student applies to University of Oregon with a 3.9 or 3.8 and chooses to go, they are automatically given a $10,000 scholarship. I think it's a 3.6 gives them like a 7,500. So just so you know, remember when you're looking that there are scholarships like that that are for Washington students that may not always be obvious, but they are there as well. So that came to mind because we were pleasantly surprised. So any other questions? This has been so great. I don't see any more. Do you all have anything else that you have thought about or wanted to add before we, Gary and Jay?
I'm good. Jay, do you have anything you want to add? You're doing a lot of nodding. I know it's just stuff we talk about every day in our world, but.
I would say just understand there's so many different opportunities, and you have to figure out what works for your family, and don't get discouraged. You know, like Katie just said, sometimes you're going to stumble upon a strategy that can really be helpful and can save you a bunch of money. So, you know, start doing a little bit of research and you know, don't lose hope. It's going to be okay. That's my message.
Thank you. And for those parents who are starting to really dive in, or maybe even doing tours a little bit this week, you know, take your own paper bag in case you hyperventilate, but it will be okay. That is the one thing I learned from this, is that I should have sent my poor husband with a paper bag. And that is the other thing I will say. I've been amazed at the people I've spoken to. The private colleges are pretty generous with making, using their endowment and scholarships to make their schools more accessible. So, you know, certainly for families for students who feel like a small college experience is important, remember that that is not, you know, necessarily out of your reach or range. So, okay. Do we all want to unmute and say thank you, or thank you in the chat? We really, really appreciate you coming tonight. This has been so informative. Even as someone who's been through it once, I picked up so many new things. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we'll be around if you need us.
And remember, do you want to put up your screen again? Well, we'll be sharing it, and we will add the links to our PTSA page and to our newsletter.
Well, yeah, and I just to make it for those that didn't see the slide, it's pretty simple. My email is gary@garywhitehouse.com, and Jay's is jay@solutionsfortuition.com.
Great.
And I just, like I said, we offer free consultations. So just that's where we can dive in a little bit more with your family. You know, we can ask you a little bit more personal questions that we wouldn't ask, you know, but I think Jay touched on a lot of them in his slides that just made me just kind of realize how many people that are out there. I was a single dad. I had no idea about any of this stuff. I was also a business owner. Would have been a huge difference. So anyway, thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for coming. This is so
Okay.
helpful.
Thank
Have
you.
a great night.
All right. See you, Jay.
Good night. Thanks,
You.
thanks, Gary.
Okay, bye-bye.